everyone, RogueGold here, and today I want to provide some commentary on Season 11 as a whole. The new update dropped last week, people have had some time to get in there, try things out, see what's new. I'll just say this off the bat, as a whole, I am very much enjoying this update. Despite it being the smallest content drop of Year 4, I'm actually finding myself much more engaged in wanting to jump back in than I was back when Season 10 dropped. So I think that speaks to some of the quality of what was introduced, and so that's really what I want to get into here. Instead of going over every single change in addition and giving my thoughts on it, because that would take like an hour, there are two things in particular that I want to focus on. One aspect of the update that I've been extremely pleased by, and I'm excited as for what it could mean for the Division 2's future, but also one aspect of Season 11 that I am rather disappointed by, at least when considering what we were led to believe about these specific changes prior to the update's release. And yeah, even though I am enjoying the update as a whole, it's important to highlight where improvements could have been made. So I very much hope you all enjoy. If you do, a like would be super appreciated on the video, and be sure to hit that subscribe button as well as clicking on the bell icon so you don't miss any of my future uploads. So let's kick things off with what I have surprisingly enjoyed most so far with Season 11, and that is the seasonal content itself and our manhunt for Stovepipe. I will warn you for spoilers here in case you haven't yet defeated the first target of Chunks. I am really pleased by this season's story, presentation, and content thus far. Now I know some of you may be wondering why I think that when we're still replaying the same content in this format, and don't worry, I will address that, but heading into this update's launch, I was already pretty excited. I had some expectations, which I usually don't as far as the seasonal content itself is concerned. These expectations were mainly created from comments by the devs stating their confidence in the season, so I had hope, and I'm happy to report that for me personally, my expectations were exceeded. Now I want to explain why that is, because yes, we are still replaying old zones, old bounty locations, old mission spots to take down these new targets, but it's everything else around that that is continually improved over the course of Year 4. And given what we're seeing right now with Season 11, it truly does excite me for where they might take things in Year 5. So to start out, obviously we got the castle back. I relayed a lot of my thoughts on this in a video I did on launch day, but seeing them incorporate this settlement restoration into the seasonal model and storyline is just something I think is super cool to experience. The art design is on point with the new fortifications, having our seasonal NPC be there with comms, there's a recal and a crafting bench. It's a new seasonal hub, and I find that to be refreshing and exciting. But truly, it's not even just the castle that I find to be so pleasing with Season 11, it's the overall coherence of the experience that the devs have now reached with seasonal content. And yes, we are still playing old content while completing these manhunt targets, but for me personally, all of the little improvements and additions made to that are what makes it fun for me. For example, we now have extra dialogue and cohesion between the zone we're playing in and the story. In seasons prior, the gameplay portion of the manhunt targets would be completely disconnected from the comms we would receive. But now, Wally tells you we've received reports of increased hunter activity in the West Potomac Park. Keep an eye out for their drones. So we go and do the activities in the West Potomac, and sure enough, when you're in the Lincoln Memorial fighting Chunks, you encounter one of those drones, and destroying it triggers the Isaac line to go and get the extra comm from Wally. Like I said, small stuff, but season over season, we've continued to see these improvements that continue to make the experience more cohesive and immersive. Additionally, the mission takeovers. Back in Season 9, we now had the sub-targets holding up in main mission areas, which was certainly cooler than bounty zones, but without any extra audio lines or really anything, it didn't really add much to the experience. Well, fast forward to Season 11 and Chunks' bounty at Lincoln Memorial. Aside from the fact that it is taking place in an old zone, it really kind of feels like a brand new mission. Kelso briefs you on the op, talking about Chunks' background and what to watch out for. There's the scripted event like the hunter drone that I mentioned. The manhunt targets themselves now have audio lines and dialogue. We saw that in Season 10, but it continued here as well. The spawns are different from the normal mission. I was actually taken by surprise when Chunks spawned in that room. I wasn't really prepared for it, and I had to dig in. So, as I said, it's all of these little things that are coming together to make everything feel more fresh, feel more fun, and I've really appreciated that so far. It also helps that the overall story of Season 11 is quite good so far. The premise that Natalia Sokolova is bringing the heat to Washington and taking the fight to us, that's dope. The comms see her and Chunks discussing a potential attack on the campus, which she then dissuades, but he says they've raided a place north of the city. It's all just much more engaging and relevant. I mean, if there were to be some sort of settlement and attack event at some point mid-season, I wouldn't even be shocked at this point. Those are the kind of surprises we're now getting, not to mention we're also getting more tie-ins now. All of those comms from the castle mentioning St. Louis are a direct reference to the events that took place in the Division Recruited novel, which released last year. So at this point, I'm legitimately looking forward to what we'll find out and what might happen when the next target unlocks. perks? Will we see the castle's status improve and continue receiving upgrades? I don't know. What other scripted events or unknown threats could we find in the next zone? I don't know. But the fact that there is an actual element of surprise with this seasonal content now, it's fun. It's simply fun to have around. And so yes, one final time, despite the fact that we are still playing through old content to progress these manhunts, given that we've seen improvements to the seasonal content system in every year 4 update thus far, it's clear that Massive is committed to making this stuff more fresh and engaging, and I'm interested to see if and how that endeavor will continue into year 5. So that is my most positive point of the update. I'll certainly be curious to hear all of your guys' thoughts on that. Now I want to turn to one aspect of Season 11 that I am rather disappointed by, and what sucks is that it's not even something that really came in the update itself. I'll explain. We're talking about PvP. Now let's just get one thing clear off the bat. Despite my deep adoration for PvP in this game and franchise, it's still my favorite part about the Division. I am not under the illusion that we should be expecting major PvP overhauls or refinement at this point in time, and the one and only reason for that is that Massive lost its PvP support studio, which was Red Storm Entertainment. Throughout the Division 1 and 2, Massive has always had Red Storm to rely on and handle the PvP side of the game, as Massive is not a studio with PvP experience. While that was until late 2019, early 2020, when we now know that Red Storm was moved off of the project to go and start working on the Division Heartland. So while I would love to see PvP continue to be improved in this game, ever since Red Storm departed, I have never been under the impression that we would ever see that on any sort of a major scale. And I think that some people have been continually setting themselves up for disappointment when they do anticipate that. We did hear Yannick, the game's creative director, say at the start of year 4 that if they were to acquire some devs with PvP experience over time, they would begin to tackle more PvP stuff, which was inspiring to hear. And for a lot of people, myself included, we began to think that that time may have come when we started to hear the devs say that Season 11 would see the beginning of some real PvP changes. And even back on the Season 10 reveal stream, they said that their goal was to hammer out every major outlier and unintended experience within the Division 2's PvP, which sounded great, but in the end, here we are with Season 11 now out, and nothing has really changed. The only 2 notable things to mention is that they finally fixed the Shrapnel Trap, which is a major win, and I don't want to underscore that, yet it was meant to arrive 6 months ago, so it's really hard to say that that's a huge Season 11 change. And then they made the change to the Jammer Pulse, which, look, I appreciate that they actually went in and made a mechanical change to how a certain aspect of PvP plays, but if your goal is to fix the major outliers of PvP, this should not have been a priority. Because while I think in an ideal world where Division 2 PvP is far better balanced, this concept for how the Jammer now functions is sensible and it would be a well-balanced interaction. With how everything else is currently balanced within PvP, it just doesn't make a ton of sense to implement. So look, at the end of the day, it's probably my fault that I bought into the idea that PvP would see big improvements, because again, I know that they don't have Red Storm, we shouldn't expect big changes at this point. But when they put out tweets like this, finally giving PvP players a glimmer of hope and then not much materializes out of it, it stings. Now yes, I think undoubtedly plans changed and timeline shifted. We know that the ETF, which they meant to have up and running back in like September or October of last year, is just now finally going to start having sessions. So maybe Season 11 was originally going to have greater PvP additions, but they just want those players' input first. Who knows? I'll say this. If you need a rundown of major points to actually hit on as far as PvP balance and outliers before going after stuff like the Jammer Pulse, I would say to consider expertise levels, armor gain while retaining high damage, the possibility of re-adding crit resistance, status effects, skill tuning, talent rebalancing. There's a number of other things to touch on, and that could probably be a whole series of videos in and of itself, but I really do hope that these ETF sessions can help give the devs an idea of what to pursue to make true meaningful change when it comes to PvP in the Division 2. As for Season 11, I think in the end it was a bit deceptive to market it as containing PvP quality of life changes, because while it does, they ultimately do very little to make a true difference in the moment-to-moment experience. Alright everybody, well that is my review in a way of Season 11 for the Division 2, really just talking about the highs and lows of the update for me so far. I very much hope you enjoyed, and I encourage you to share any and all of your thoughts below. What have you thought about Season 11 so far? What's your reaction to stuff like the seasonal content, PvP, or anything else this update delivered? As always, I will be very curious to read through it all. That's going to do it for me today, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold.